Oh, man, let's talk to Matt Barrows from The Athletic. Does a great job, as always, covering the 49ers. Matt, good morning. Thanks for joining us here after a tough Super Bowl loss, man. Such a gut-wrenching situation there for the 49ers, and there's a lot of things going on after the fact. And let's start with Steve Wilks being fired and let go from his job yesterday. Kyle Shanahan announced it. You were around the team every single day. You heard all the rumblings. You were around it when Steve Wilks got moved from the press box to the field. I don't think we're all surprised by it. Maybe the timing. What's your take on Steve Wilks being relieved a couple days after the Super Bowl, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, there were all sorts of clues that this was coming. I mean, throughout the season, and then on Tuesday when Kyle Shanahan was asked 3 times about Wilks, and he was asked 3 times because his initial answers were so vague about whether Steve Wilks was coming back. And so that sort of suggested that there certainly wasn't a bold support being voiced by Kyle Shanahan of Steve Wilks. So that sort of denoted some misgivings about Wilks. And, I mean, it was, the questions asked of Wilks when he first arrived were, is this going to be difficult for you? Because this is a system you've never run. He arrived without a single assistant, which is, I've never seen that before. Usually a new coordinator comes in and brings in all of his guys with him, guys that know his system. And there was one former Carolina Panther, Miles Hartsfield, who didn't have a very good off-season, who came in as well. So this guy literally parachuted into an unknown situation. I mean, it's like those bands that get rid of their front man and then bring in somebody else, and the sound is just not the same. And that was the case with Wilks. I mean, like Kyle Shanahan said yesterday, it doesn't mean that he's a bad coach or didn't have the respect of the players.
Right.
It's just an impossible situation for somebody to come in and play with a band that's been playing together for a long time.
Not a good fit, no doubt about that. How much influence did the players have on this move? The Bosas, the Fred Warners, the Greenlaws. How much did they have an influence on maybe this coaching move?
I would imagine they had an influence. I mean, I don't know this firsthand, but Nick Bosa holds a lot of sway. Fred Warner holds a lot of sway. So these are guys that Shanahan consults throughout the year, gets feedback from them. I don't think either guy is shy about sharing that feedback. And that's just it. I mean, after that Minnesota game in Week 7, there was a sense from the players, those 2 guys among them, that, okay, we're not playing our defense. This is different. Zero blitzes aren't us. And there was just a disconnect between coaching and the players and the system that they played in the past. And then shortly after that, it's no coincidence, Steve Wilks comes down from the booth and starts coaching from the sideline and really regains his feet at that point. I mean, that's the coming out of the bye. They go into Jacksonville and they just annihilate the Jaguars. I mean, Trevor Lawrence looked like a high school player in that game. They really had a fantastic defensive performance. They had a great one against Philadelphia. But then you get to the playoffs, and then there are all these lapses that we talked about ad nauseum. I don't have to talk about them again, but it was just up and down, inconsistent. And there were a couple of things. As good as that defense played on Sunday, and you got to give them their proper recognition. Give Wilks his proper recognition. I mean, they had Patrick Mahomes on the run for 3/4 of that game, but there were also some lapses that were big ones at the end and helped the Chiefs win the game.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees that understands that it's not about one game or one moment. It was about the totality, the cumulative. I guess as I zoom out, do the players have too much influence? Because this is the way I view things. The NFL, we see the schemes. Players get hurt, and they're in and out of the lineup. Fred Warner's great right now. Drake Greenlaw's out for the year. That changes the fabric of how they play defense. So are they able to find the best candidate, or are they looking for someone to run what Kyle and Warner and Bosa want them to run? Because doesn't that limit finding the best candidate?
Yeah, I think it does, and that question was posed to Kyle Shanahan, and the first words out of his mouth were that he's not going to do something. He's going to try to build the best defense, and the preference is that they can bring in somebody who runs something close to what the 49ers have been running. This is what the players are used to running. It's what they were drafted to run. So they were selected with a scheme in mind, and I think that's important. But the next sentence was that, okay, but I'm not going to close my mind to somebody who comes in with his own scheme, his own ideas. And I would imagine, though, that means that this candidate comes in with his own assistants as well. And that's been a sticking point. I mean, they love Chris Kasarik. They love Johnny Holland. They love Daniel Bullocks in the secondary. So I have a hard time thinking it's going to be somebody who comes in with a whole new scheme, who wants to come in with a whole new staff. I'd be surprised about that. I think that person would have to really kind of blow Kyle Shanahan away. And maybe it's a Pete Carroll. I mean, it's a big name like that, and Shanahan agrees with you that it's time to sort of blow up the system and start anew and things like that. But I mean, if you're talking 3-4 versus 4-3, something as basic as that, Joey Bosa plays a 3-4 in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I've heard that he'd rather be in a 4-3, and Nick Bosa has been very open about saying that. Remember, back in 2019, the Cardinals had a chance to draft him as well. Cardinals played a 3-4 at the time, and Bosa said, yeah, I'm glad it was the 49ers because they play a system that I like better. I didn't want to be a stand-up linebacker.
Wow, Matt Barrows here, courtesy of the Boxer and Gerson guest line on the Morning Roast here on 95.7 The Game. All right, Brandon Aiyuk is another big talking point there because he's due for some new money. He's under contract, and he was very emotional at that end-of-season presser. I know you were there. He couldn't get the words out of his mouth, man, and I get it. You just lost the Super Bowl in overtime to Kansas City. But where are we at with Brandon Aiyuk? I got to feel like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan want him back, and they want to pay him. They've taken care of their players before. Where's Brandon Aiyuk fall into that equation?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get the sense that everybody's kind of gearing up for another difficult negotiation similar to the one that they had with Deebo Samuel 2 years ago. So the next thing to look out for is Aiyuk erasing the team from his social media. Wow. That seems to be the MO these days. But I agree with you. I mean, I think it's clear from what they said and everything that's been said that they're gearing up for Brock Purdy to be their quarterback for the long term, which means a huge contract negotiation begins about a year from now. And if you're committing to Brock Purdy, I would imagine you're committing to Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, they're such a duo. The chemistry is there. Both guys do what Kyle Shanahan wants. So if you've got Kyle Shanahan for the long term, Brandon Aiyuk for the long term, Shanahan and Purdy for the long term, I would imagine that means Brandon Aiyuk for the long term as well. And of course, the agent will use that, and it's going to be. Forgive me, I'm gearing up for all sorts of weird news to come at inopportune times, demanding trades and stuff like that. But that may be in our future this spring and summer.
You keep referencing Brock Purdy getting a huge contract and extending him. I mean, you really think? I mean, because Jalen Hurts got the one great year, MVP season. He was amazing in the Super Bowl, and he had a solid year this year, but he took a little step back. Let's say the same thing happens with Purdy. He has another solid year, but it takes a little step back from how efficient he was. You really think that they'd be, they're going to start with like a Jalen Hurts 150, 180 million guaranteed contract?
Yeah. I mean, if he has a season similar to 2023, I mean, there are all sorts of things that could happen. I mean, injury would be, I think, just as likely as a real kind of step backward. But I mean, Shanahan thinks that this guy has everything that he looks for in a quarterback, and reinforced that in 2023. Big difference between now and a year ago. He spent his whole offseason rehabbing from an arm injury. Now he's going to spend a whole offseason kind of working on, his understanding of the offense. He was talking about mobility. He's still kind of rebuilding the arm back up. So, there's a thought that he's going to be better in 2024 than he was this past season.
Wow.
Man, that's wild. Let me go ahead, follow up, Shaz, because I want to ask Matt something else.
Well, so like this overtime thing.
Oh, I was going to go there.
This overtime thing. No, it's the more and more I think about it, I'm like actually kind of surprised because he referenced analytics, Kyle Shanahan. And I'm like, well, what analytics are you referencing? Like, what data points are you referencing? College? You're where they get the ball to 25 in overtime? Like, what was his follow up on the specific analytics that they were citing? Because there haven't been any major playoff game overtimes with these rules. So I want to know what samples and what analytics he's referring to. Where did that data come from? I have yet to hear that answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only assume that they're kind of studying overtimes under the old rules and what happened in those overtimes. To me, I get what he's saying, that you get the opportunity for that quote-unquote third possession where you could win the game with a field goal. But that's supposing that both teams score the same amount on their possessions. And that's the issue that I have, is that you chose that path, but you just saw in the fourth quarter the Chiefs sliced right through your defense, and you saw Diamador Lenore go to the sideline. You saw Jair Brown go to the sideline. There was no Dre Greenlaw at that point. The defense was running on fumes at that point in the game, and Patrick Mahomes and the offense was getting stronger. You had to think that when they got their possession, which they were guaranteed to have, very good chance they were going to score a touchdown. So, you have to call your plays as if you have to score a touchdown. And of course, they didn't. They kicked the field goal on 4th and 3, or 4th and 4, there at the 9-yard line. So, I mean, there seemed to be a disconnect in the choice to receive and then the mentality on that drive. That's the best I can come up with.
So Matt, we can all agree the decision, whatever. But the fact that the players didn't know the rules, and you look on the other sideline, Kansas City was prepared for the situation.
And laughing.
Their coaches, their players, they knew exactly what the overtime rules was. Now, granted, the overtime rule is baked in. It's made because of the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes game at Arrowhead Stadium a few years ago in a wild game in overtime where Josh Allen doesn't get a chance. But the fact that the Niners didn't really prep for that was very alarming. What did you think of that and all the chatter coming out of that post-Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is chatter. I mean, there were a number of 49ers who absolutely did know, including Brock Purdy, and there were a number of Kansas City Chiefs who didn't know. I mean, Patrick Mahomes had to tell Mecole Hardman that by the way, he just won the Super Bowl. He didn't know that the game was over. So, I mean, there were players on both teams that didn't know the precise rules. What the 49ers have been saying is that it's not as if we were playing at three-quarters speed there because we didn't know the exact rules. They're trying their best at that point. Like I said, I think that the 49ers played outstanding on defense through three quarters, and they were just spent by the end of the game. That's how Patrick Mahomes has won a lot of games throughout the years, and this sort of followed that script.
What did you think of the play calls to open up the third quarter? 8 runs, 8 passes, 1 run. They didn't convert off the interception. What did you think about that third quarter there offensively for Kyle Shanahan and his 49ers offense?
Yeah, I think there should have been more first down runs. Now, the issue is that they committed penalties that kind of took running out of the equation, and they also had an negative 8-yard pass play to Juwan Jennings. I mean, if Kyle Shanahan is running in those situations, you're going to be criticizing him for that as well. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like the first down plays probably should have been runs, but you understand why the others are passes when you make those mistakes.
Matt, great stuff all season. Thank you for always spending some time with us. We'll be looking for your coverage in what should be a wild all season for the San Francisco 49ers. Man, we thought we were going to be covering the parade today, Matt. Go figure.
Yeah, next year maybe.
Next year, baby. Next year, baby. Good stuff, man. Matt
Thanks,
Barrows
Matt.
here on the Boxer and Girls and Guest line on the Morning Roast here
Biggest
at 95.7 Game.